But after 20 years of that, when I decided to quit my job because I had this fabulous book that was going to be an instant bestseller, I was a little naive about how that all works. It actually went pretty well at first. The book sold well. I was invited to Hollywood, met with Miramax. They might make a movie. The movie never got made.
I encouraged her. I said, well, go listen to some other audiobook narrators and make sure that you get the right voice for your book. Because if it's going to be solo narration, you want to make sure they can handle all the characters and in a way that you kind of hear it in your head, you know?
Hello, and thank you for joining us. I'm your host, Anna Clements, and this is Audiobooks with Anna, where we explore the fascinating world of audiobooks with industry experts. Thank you very much, everybody, for being here today. We're being joined by Steve Corona and Linda Hughes, who've come along to chat with us about their project that they did together, a book called Gold Mountain. The general idea of this hour is just to get the two of you to introduce yourselves to us, have a chat about how you met and how the project went, and then talk to us about things you've got coming up and what your plans are for the future. So, Steve, I don't know if you got here first, so you get to start, I guess. Give us a brief overview of you. I know a lot of people here know you already, but for the sake of argument, tell us a little bit about how you became an audiobook narrator.
Sure, yeah. Well, the first audiobook I narrated was in, I think, 2007, I want to say. I was new to all things voiceover, and I just, started putting up the profiles on the pay-to-play sites, and I wasn't getting anything. I was, auditioning for, I think, a couple of months, and I was like, man, okay, I know I need to refine my technique, but where's the work eventually at the end of the tunnel? And finally, I said, audiobook sounds like fun. I like reading out loud anyway, and I come from a theatrical background. So I put some samples up on one of my profiles for some audiobooks. And the next day, a small boutique audiobook publishing company reached out to me and said, hey, are you interested in narrating? We have a handful of abridged titles of classics, all public domain stuff. And we think your voice would be great for it. I was like, really? Really? I should have done this months ago. So finally, I put that sample up, and that booked me on my first couple. And I wish that I had kept with it, but life happened. So I only did a handful of audiobooks that first year, stepped away for a bit, did film and TV acting and coaching work in between, and raised my kids. And then I really came back to audiobooks more or less full time in about 2018 and have been doing it since. So that's sort of my journey.
And
That's
Steve,
wonderful.
this is Linda.
Thank you.
Thank goodness that you did. Yeah, Anna,
No, no,
go
no. I
ahead.
was only going to say, Linda, do tell us your story. And I'm over after an overview, but actually, it's such a fascinating thing to hear how people get into different careers. So I'm already excited, Linda.
Yeah, I don't know how exciting my life is, but it is interesting. I do have a quick story to tell you about voiceover that you all will appreciate more than anybody else because 25 years ago, this is before some of you were born probably, but I decided to quit my very nice day job because I was going to be a full-time writer and I was going to write this fabulous book and become a best-selling rich author. And you all know how that went. And it actually went pretty well at first. The book sold well. I was invited to Hollywood, met with Miramax. They might make a movie. The movie never got made. Anyway, after a while, I realized I had to get another job. And one of the things I did along the way was I took some classes with the Alliance Theater in Atlanta on voiceover. And again, this was a long time ago. It was before audiobooks were a big thing. And so I took these classes and learned how to do voiceover for, at that time, what was advertising. There was a lot of radio advertising, there was some television ads, and I hooked up with a company, a talent agency that did all of that. And I absolutely loved it. It was so much fun. And that was not my full time job, it was a side job. And what I learned from that is that, well, first of all, I just loved it because I didn't have to comb my hair or, at that time we were going to a studio, but it was still a group of us that always worked together. We got to know each other. We had so much fun together and it was very, very collaborative. And but it wasn't a full-time job for me. And what I learned was to appreciate those of you who do this kind of work. I probably could have worked really hard to be good enough to keep it up, but the talent that some of you have is amazing to me. And so when I finally did become a full-time author, and I was looking for a narrator for Gold Mountain. I heard Steve, and I just felt he was perfect. His voice was absolutely perfect for this book. And one of the things we were taught in the classes that I took was that, and you may think of this differently, but this is what I was taught, was that when you do a voice for a character, you stay within a box. And that box is all the characteristics of how that person sounds and how they talk. And when I first heard Steve, I thought, oh my goodness, he knows how to stay in the box. He stays in the box for each character. He doesn't fall out of the box, which now that I think of it that way, I hear in audiobooks sometimes. And so it kind of annoys me, but I just knew he was the one. I did, however, do my due diligence and I listened to many other narrators for that book. And I came right back and said, no, he's the one. he's got to do it. And Steve, I don't know if you want to talk about this or not, but I think there were something like 37 characters in that book, including, yeah, a Frenchman, a Russian, San Francisco man, a Kansas yeehaw guy, 5 children prostitutes, natives. Go ahead.
Yeah, I don't remember the number exactly, but there was a great cast of characters I got to play, and it was so much fun. I think probably my favorite was the old prospector guy turned preacher, right? That guy was a lot of fun. He had that sort of like old prospector kind of shaky sort of voice. I just loved it, and you did such a good job sort of describing each of the characters' voices that made it easier for me to jump into them. So anyway, I think we've sort of veered a little bit off topic, Anna, but steer us back on
You
track.
did. Will do, will do. Yeah, we jumped right to the end of the conversation, didn't we? So let's back it up. Linda, you skipped right over the I attached myself to a talent agency, which in and of itself is such a great phrase. And I need more information. I really need to know because I do believe that a lot of it is hard work. A lot of us are here because we have dedicated time and energy to one single thing and that we are passionate about and we adore, and hopefully day by day we get better and better. But I'm really interested in kind of asking what your previous passions were, and was being a writer always in the back of your mind? Was ultimately that your main goal to get to where you are now, I guess?
Yeah, and I'm one of those writers. You always hear this story. When I was 12 years old, I wrote in my diary that I was going to be a ritter when I grew up. I spelled it wrong, but I had the main idea. I knew I wanted to write things, and I just didn't know how to have a career doing that. So I spent 20 years as a seminar leader, worked with a company that sent me all over the world, but because I traveled so much and was on airplanes all the time, I always had time to sit on the plane and write. And so I never lost that desire. And I was always writing something, magazine articles or even textbooks and editing things. And I was an associate editor of an online magazine and as well as my day job as a seminar leader. So the writing was always there. But after 20 years of that, when I decided to quit my job because I had this fabulous book that was going to be an instant bestseller, I was a little naive about how that all works. It was a big, big leap, but I knew that writing was what I wanted to do. When I didn't succeed at first and had to get another job, which I had for 16 years, as it turned out, I still kept writing. I would just write and write and write. So some of the stories that it seems like I've come up with just in the past few years since I've been a full time writer again, those stories were really worked on a long time ago, some of them. And so they've always been rolling around in my head. And I truly just love telling these stories. And so the voiceover work that I did was a sideline. And just, I always say that was the most fun job I ever had because the people that I worked with and the things that we did. And I got small jobs. I didn't get big jobs. I got a lot of radio advertising jobs that were local and had a great time. But this writing that I've been doing full time for the past 4 years, I guess, and I have 27 books out there. And the first one that I did in audiobook was Steve's. And I'll tell you very honestly, I am a mid-lister. I'm a solid mid-lister author, which means I don't have a lot of extra cash. It means that my books continuously sell, but I don't have a lot of budget left to do audiobooks. I've since done one more in the same series with Andy Arndt. She was fantastic for that book. It's a book set on a little island, Mackinac Island, and I did not know at the time that I asked her to do the book that she got married or she had her honeymoon on Mackinac Island. So that was just really cool. That word really worked out great. But the writing has been there for a very long time.
I need to press you some more on this past of yours, Linda, because I feel like I appreciate you're here to talk about being a full-time author, and 27 books is impressive, and thrilled that you have 2 audiobooks behind you already. But I'm still fascinated by the idea that, firstly, I need to ask about there are no such thing as small jobs. So having worked as a voiceover, that makes you a voiceover. And I'm curious that you weren't interested or curious about narrating your own books. Can I ask whether you contemplated it and whether that did something in particular stop you, or did it not appeal?
It did appeal to me very much. And what I've realized, I understand the limits of my talent and ability at this point. And I have narrated a couple of my nonfiction books, which makes sense because, everybody knows I'm the author and it's all nonfiction. But I truly don't have the kind of ability that you have as narrators. And again, if I worked hard at it, I could probably be okay, but I don't have the ability, the training, or the experience to do what you do so incredibly well. And every time I think that I could do my own, and I do something and then I listen to a professional, I go, oh, no, no, I don't, I really don't want to do this.
And sometimes I think it's interest. Obviously your passion, your interest lies in the writing, so that's kind of fair enough. I'm also really curious. We talk a lot here in the audiobooks house about. Well, I talk a lot with my students about the fact that we bring to the microphone everything that we are. The reason we speak the way we do, the reason we interpret words, or we take a particular take on a sentence or a phrase, is because of our life experience. Do you feel you mentioned about being a seminar leader and flying around the world? Do you feel that it's part and parcel of the way you write? Have you been able to bring your life experience into your writing?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, I sometimes wonder if I do it a little bit too much, but I just was incredibly fortunate for 20 years to work for a company, and we did seminars like life balance and communication skills and team building. And they sent us all over the world. When I say us, they had a lot of us who did this. And they would send us all over the world to work for different companies. And I worked for government agencies. And I always said I learned so much more from the people that I met than they could possibly have ever learned from me. I mean, I've worked for the Knights of England, who had me do programs on women in leadership for them, and they treated me like a queen. I've stayed at the Skywalker Ranch in California, George Lucas's ranch, and worked with his staff. I mean, that was just incredible. They have a village where their guests stay, and I got a house. You don't get a room, you get a house. And I got this beautiful Victorian house, and they told me that Ron Howard and Harrison Ford stayed at that house whenever they came, and I was running around going, "Oh my God!" Harrison Ford was in this room. He sat in this chair, and he laid in this bed. And so I've always thought of those things, and the people that I've met around the world. For all those years, I felt like a citizen of the world. I felt like a gypsy in ways. I belonged everywhere, and that certainly has informed my writing a great deal. And I feel so lucky that I ever had that experience. And of course, traveling can be difficult, but once I always got to wherever I was going, it was just I loved it. Now, even the bad experiences, the scary experiences were amazing. And so that is a lot of what I bring into my characters, as well as my own experiences, now with everything else. I had well, I'll just go ahead and tell you I had a short second marriage. My first husband died young, and I've written about that. One of my best selling books was a character whose husband died young. I had a short second marriage to a cowboy, and oh my goodness, he's been fabulous material for the bad guy in a number of my stories. Steve, I think you probably did a voice for him, and so that's been great. And then I've been remarried for 37 years, and so I have that life as well. So all of those experiences, and I think all of us as authors bring all of those experiences, whether we mean to or not, we end up bringing those experiences into what we write. And so we need narrators who have a feel for that, who aren't flat, who know the nuances, who know the richness of all of that. So yeah, my experiences inform my writing a lot.
I love the thank you for sharing all of that. I love the idea you mentioned that Andy Arndt had narrated one of your books that was set on an island where she had had her own honeymoon. And I'm always fascinated by the fact that we often find a connection within books that is hidden initially. Steve, can I ask you, if your life experiences affect your voice performance and your career, and how you connected to this particular book that you narrated for Linda?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I was thinking about that too because I knew the Andy Arndt, Michigan kind of connection with that book. And for me, I'm trying to think. I'm like, well, I mean, I've been to San Francisco in my life, and but I've never been to Alaska, which is where most of the book takes place. However, though, I'm very fascinated by that time period that Linda sets the book in, that 1890s Alaska gold rush. That's always been really, really interesting to me. So, I'm very familiar with it and I've done my research on it. And I don't know, it was just really kind of fun for me to imagine going back to that time and those events and what that would have been like. Yeah, I guess that's kind of how I approach all acting, really, is just imagining what would that be like if I actually was there. Not that I necessarily ever have been. So, yeah, I guess it's my natural fascination and curiosity about history and just people's personalities and imagining what it would be like if I was that person or if I was in that place. So maybe that's the best way I can answer that.
And do you feel that your life experience has changed how you interpret books? That your compared, for example, to 20 years ago?
Mm, okay, yeah, absolutely. So, not to give too much away, but yeah, the book is largely about a father and son relationship and how that evolves throughout the course of the book. I think is absolutely beautiful. And being a father myself of a son, that definitely informed, how I was approaching how those two interacted with each other, and my understanding and being able to relate to it was definitely a lot deeper than had I not been a father. I mean, of course, any actor worth their salt, I guess, could imagine that situation. But you're right, absolutely. Having actually lived in that dynamic myself, being a father to a son, I imagined, okay, well, let's fast forward a little bit because at the time I narrated it, my son was very small, but now he's a teenager. But even fast forward a little bit more, what happens when he's a young adult and I'm still his father and he's going through some of these life, things. And I can at least imagine what that would be like being his father. So, yeah, definitely.
Thank you. It's really incredible sometimes how the books that come to us are meant for us. I always feel like we talk as well about sort of the sense of abundance and the quantity of books that are out there for us to read. And actually, any book that's due to you is coming to you, kind of thing. And I love the idea that you've kind of matched up so beautifully. We've been joined by Rosemary. Rosemary, thank you very much for coming up to the sofa to say hello to us. Did you have a comment or a question to share?
Hi, everybody. Linda, Steve, Anna, how are you
Very
all?
well, thank you.
What I was thinking when Linda was speaking, and then Steve too, is all of those relevant experiences that match up, perhaps, or closely align, are certainly a vein of richness when we do our work. But I think also, I think maybe Linda was saying this, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's also just having lived, having had many relationships, having done lots of things, or held lots and had lots of careers and gone deeply into different areas of life. It just all that stuff informs our work, informs how we understand a character or a relationship between characters. I was just thinking that.
Absolutely. No, no, I agree with you totally. Thank you very much. And ultimately comes back to, well, again, what I say daily to people, that ultimately you are the only person that will interpret the words the way you interpret them. So your version of the book, and Linda spoke to this at the beginning, saying that she did her due diligence and listened to other people, and ultimately Steve was the one, which is lovely. Linda, may I come back to you and ask about your other work coming up to this book? Where does this Gold Mountain, I believe it's called, where does it lie within your sort of scope of writing? Was it an early book, or is it one of the more recent ones? And how did you choose to take this one specifically to audio?
Oh, that's a great question, Anna, because the book came about initially because in the job that I mentioned earlier, I had been sent to Alaska in the middle of winter one time to work and absolutely fell in love with it. I knew someday I had to write a book about Alaska. And many of my books are historical. And so the gold rush, Klondike Gold Rush, which I learned about when I was there, was just a natural topic. And so it all started right there. But where it falls in terms of all that I've done, that's part of a series. And it's right in the middle of the series. It's 5 books and 2 now. Andy did the other one. And there are 3 left to do. And one of my primary goals as an author is to have the budget to have the other 3 done in audiobook. It doesn't make much sense to me, and you might have more of a feeling about this than I do, but it doesn't make much sense to me to have a series that has 2 books that are in audio and the rest are not. Because if people are interested in the 2, they're also going to be interested in the other 3. And so that's something that I'm definitely working towards. And people they seem to like the books, and they like the audio books, and so I've got to keep that going. But I write women's fiction. I say that it's romantic women's fiction with grit, sizzle, and soul, so that people know there's some spice, and they're a little bit more hardcore. They're not sweet. They're not sweetie sweet women's fiction, which can be great too, but that's just not what I like to write. I have a series, for example, called The Burly Q Girls, and it's a series about retired burlesque dancers that are trying to get their money back from their manager. It's a mystery series, and I would love nothing more in the world than to have somebody take on those burlesque dancers someday, because that one really is fun. And I have others where there are ancestor ghosts. I have a series that's set in Scotland. And so, even though they're all romantic women's fiction, there's really a variety. And so, the one that Steve did for me, Gold Mountain, is part of that series. That the first books that I ever can budget to have done in audio, that's the series that I will finish. That makes the most sense.
Real quick, jump in on what Linda said about her characters being a little bit gritty and very interesting. That was one of the things that drew me to the book. I was like, oh, these are some fun characters. So I just wanted to agree with that.
Steve, I was coming to you to ask about this process of actually creating this book. Then, how did you come across it? How did the process of actually auditioning go? Did you think it was yours for the taking? Talk us through kind of what before you met and knew Linda and the book itself. What happened?
Yeah, well, I guess we have Clubhouse to thank for that, don't we, Linda? We met here on Clubhouse, and I think it was was it the writers or what is it called? The authors conference, the bigger one that meets earlier in the morning. And I guess they were talking about audiobooks one day, and I was listening. And I just always love listening to authors talk because it gives me a deeper understanding. Like Linda was saying, the reverse, she has a very deep understanding and appreciation for what we do as narrators. And I have the reverse, affection and appreciation for authors. So I'd like to learn about what their struggles are, what they're going through. So I was sitting and listening to the room, and they were talking about audiobooks. And I don't know if I raised my hand or if Michelle or somebody, whoever was running the room, said, "Oh, hey, it looks like Steve's a narrator. Maybe he can answer some of these questions." So they brought me up and were talking with me, and I was doing my best to answer and help them, just understand, because some of them were trying to figure out like what does this all entail, this whole audiobook creation process. So yeah, and I think just in the conversation, Linda, I don't know, I guess you could speak to that, Linda, but I think you maybe liked something I had to say, or you liked the quality of my voice or something, and we ended up connecting and communicating a bit. And I remember we had that first meeting, Linda, where you were asking, you were just kind of intrigued, like, okay, I am thinking about making this into an audiobook. What does that look like? What's your process? So I laid out everything, like, here's what I do. Here's kind of like the typical what you can expect working with the narrator. Um, sort of what should be on your plate, what should be on mine, and rates and all of that, and looking at putting it through ACX and all the sort of options that are available, right? And then I remember, Linda, I told you, I was like, well, but here's the thing. I don't want you, this is your first audiobook. I don't want you to feel pressured or like you're rushing into anything. So I encouraged her. I said, well, go listen to some other audiobook narrators and make sure that you get the right voice for your book. Because if it's going to be solo narration, you want to make sure they can handle all the characters and in a way that you kind of hear it in your head. So she did, right, Linda? You went off and listened to some others. Did you interview anybody else or have auditions? I'm not sure.
Yeah, it worked out exactly as you said. I did not know really anything about narration other than what I had read about ACX and all of that. I had one other book done before, but then for some reason we never published it. We weren't happy with it, and which was fiction, and so that one didn't get out there. And so you really educated me. You taught me what I needed to know to proceed with the process, and I did go out and listen to others as you had suggested. I do suspect I probably would have just hired you on the spot if you would have let me, if you wouldn't have made me go do my homework to make sure I was happy with you. But I think it was hearing, I know, it was hearing your voice in that Clubhouse meeting that put it together for me. And I'd been thinking about narration. I'd been trying to decide which book I wanted to have narrated first. And when I heard your voice, I knew you were perfect for that particular book. And so you really were the impetus for me starting with that one. And I so appreciated how much you educated me. And I think all of you as narrators probably know that this is something you need to do with most of us as authors who haven't done narrations before, who haven't had them done, is that we just don't really know how it works. And so Steve connected me with a production company and they distributed and they gave me a really good deal on my first one. And when I went back to them for a second one, they didn't give me the same deal. So I couldn't do it then. It wasn't in my budget. But still, that first experience was extremely positive. And part of that was because you taught me how to do it. And I appreciate that so much, Steve.
Absolutely. And I just want to be clear. I wasn't trying to talk you out of hiring me. I just wanted to make sure, it's your first one and that you're absolutely happy before you jump in. So that's all.
So talk us through it then, Linda. You got the first 15 from Steve and you've signed a contract. It's all going ahead. How did that feel? Were you as pleased throughout the process as well, how did it feel? Okay, sorry, back up. When you did the first 15, did you get everything you thought you were looking for?
I got everything I thought I was looking for and more because I had no idea what to expect. And so I got the first 15, and there were some things that I wanted pronounced a little differently. There was one voice I remember I wanted to be a little bit different. And when I told Steve about that, he was so accommodating and said, sure. And he sent me a sample then of the other way you could do the voice, which was absolutely perfect. And I also really appreciated, and I had not anticipated this, was he asked me to send him an audio of me pronouncing some of the words that the way that I wanted them pronounced. And that was fantastic. I hadn't anticipated that, didn't think about it myself. And so for me to be able to tell him, because we had so many different accents, we had places in Alaska that I had been at, I had worked at, so I knew how to pronounce them, especially if they were native names. And so that audio that he had me send him of me pronouncing the words, I think worked. It worked really well for me, Steve. I think it did for you too.
You were certainly in very good hands, Linda. I'm thrilled to hear the process that we live and breathe. And Steve is one of the good ones, of which there are many. But you did very well there. So, and I'm leading up to the question that was in the chat from Dana, which is: did you ever find yourself wanting to micromanage the recording process? Talked about how Steve read those characters. Were you happy then to kind of be hands off and leave Steve to it?
That I don't know if Steve will agree with me or not, but I think I was pretty hands off. That's usually my style. I like to hand things over and say, "Do it," and go do something else in the meantime. And I think that's what I did. I don't remember going back and forth too much, Steve. What about you? What do you
Yeah,
remember?
no, I think that's what happened is you were happy with it. You said, okay, God bless, go forth and make this book. I think, we may have had some communications back and forth, maybe if I had a question on something, but no, it wasn't micromanaging for sure.
And then we get to the part where he actually sends you all the files, Linda. Were you do you self-proof? I know a lot of indie authors like to listen through the book themselves. Are you one of those, or do you outsource that, or how did it work?
Oh, I listened to everything. I was so excited. And I listened to it and I was playing it for my husband, for anybody who came in the house. Listen to him, listen to this. This is so cool. I have an audiobook and I'm sure I listened to it 2 or 3 times. My husband, whether he wanted to or not, although he really loved it, he listened to it, and I was playing parts of it for other people. I was just very excited, and maybe because it was the first time, but also because I think it was just a really great narration.
It's wonderful. I'm loving how we're hearing the passion and excitement that was in there. Dana put another question in the chat. Thank you, Dana. Was the turnaround time what you expected, Linda? And you mentioned at the beginning that you sort of had no idea of how this was going to work. And I don't mean to put you on the spot here, Steve, but was it what you imagined, or was Steve just so good at setting out the kind of the boundaries of how this was going to work that he just fulfilled the requirements?
Oh, he fulfilled the requirements. And again, I didn't quite know what to expect, but what I appreciated was he was very clear about he had some other projects he had to finish first. And he gave me a date. And I remember this, Steve, because like I said, I didn't know. Does this take 1 month or does it take 6 months? I just had no idea. And so you were very clear about you had other projects. Each would take a certain amount of time and when you would be able to get to this and how long you anticipated it would take you to finish it. And I remember wondering if it was really possible for you to do all of that. I didn't know how a person got all that done, but I got it right on cue, right on time.
And Steve, did you anticipate, is all of your scheduling as clear cut as that?
Oh, I wish I could say yes, but then I'd be lying. Sometimes we all know how it is as narrators. Sometimes we might bite off a little more than we could chew. I've done that, been there, and had to scramble last minute or try to push back deadlines. But as far as I remember, Linda, I'm pretty sure whatever deadline I told you, I did deliver it by that point. So in this case, it worked out beautifully, like it should every time, Anna.
I'm glad to hear it. There's been a request in the chat, Linda, for you to talk a bit more about your burlesque girls. Can you talk us through that series? You've piqued some curiosity.
Oh my goodness, I would just love so much for somebody to take them on. I had a very, very close friend. She was my second mama. She was my mama Lottie. She was a very famous, she's someone I met along the way as I was traveling around. And she was a very famous burlesque dancer back in the day when burlesque wasn't just stripping. I mean, it was really a show. And she always wanted me to write novels about her experiences. And oh, the stories she told were just amazing. And so I did that. She did die at age 89, 5 years ago. And I'm so glad that I got these stories out before then. But it's 6 former dancers. They congregated in Las Vegas because their manager has stolen their retirement funds. They're all in their 60s and 70s. And like all of my books, I always picture this one as a movie, and I've cast all the 60 and 70-year-old women as the former burlesque dancers. But it's really a sweet, sweet story about old friends coming together. It's also very funny. Of course, they're in Las Vegas. They're mobsters, and these things really happened to my friend Lottie. She was Lottie the Body, was her stage name, and so it's really touching in that they're friends and they come together. And of course, there's the one nemesis, the one they all hate, because she married a really rich guy and became filthy rich, and here they are trying to get their retirement funds so they can live. But she becomes an important part of the story. So they're just very, very rich, deep, fun characters, as you can well imagine, as Burly Q girls would have been. And as it turned out, I couldn't even believe this. I'm from a very small town, 2,000 people in Michigan. You know, it's just a tiny town that nothing happens. People don't come and go very much. And I found out that as I was writing these books, that the woman today who is known as the Queen of Burlesque was born and raised 2 blocks from me in my little hometown. So the whole series has kind of become a big deal in our little town. I think everybody thinks we're very risque and they don't know what to think of us, but that connection has been fascinating. And so these would be great audiobooks, but they also would be such fun movies.
They sound incredible. Thank you very much for sharing that with us. Steve, I'm gonna come back to you and then again to you, Linda, just to share sort of what the future holds for you and where you're going on from after your Gold Mountain joint project. Steve, what have you got going on personally at the moment, and what are you looking forward to?
Yeah, well, I'm working on a lit RPG trilogy at the moment, and then after that, I have a fantasy trilogy. Seems like I'm leaning more into these sort of fantasy realms lately. I'm having a lot of fun with the different character voices and accents, and sort of bringing me back to my childhood. When I would play Dungeons and Dragons and all that kind of stuff. So, I'm really enjoying that. Yeah, I've got a fairly full schedule moving forward, and I'm very happy about that. One of the things on my schedule that's not actually narrating is going to this event where Linda and I will be sharing a table at Pack in the Readers, the reader event up in Green Bay, Wisconsin. So that's going to be a lot of fun. Really looking forward to that.
Yeah, and Steve, I so appreciate you inviting me to join you there. And when he told me he wanted me to go to a Pack in the Readers event in Green Bay, y'all will get a kick out of this because I'm not a sports fan. I just thought, what a horrible name for an event. Pack in the Readers. I didn't know about think about the Green Bay Packers. So I guess that's a thing up there.
Fantastic. Yes, yeah. Do come back next week, Steve, and tell us more about that because it's always exciting to talk about potential outings and places to go and things to do. Linda, talk to us then about what's in store for you. Are you in the middle of writing a book at the moment? Are you promoting a book? What are you up to?
Oh, of course. Yeah, I'm always writing a book. I'm writing a book called Home Body, which is a companion to Homecoming Queen, which came out last fall. And so that's been a lot of fun. One thing about being sick recently, having COVID, is that as long as you can get your brain to work when you're sick, you can just sit and write anyway. And I got a lot of writing done during that time. So I'm excited to get that one out. It comes out Valentine's Day. And then I have 3 novellas that need to be out by June. And then I have another full length book to write this fall. So I'll be busy.
I'm in awe, Linda, and I must just ask you about your feelings about how different it's been becoming a full-time author compared to the life you led before. Have you been very disciplined about being able to? I mean, you said you've been a full-time author for 4 years and you've got 27 books out. That's a pretty impressive. I appreciate you said that these stories were building up in you beforehand, but still a pretty impressive rate. Has it been everything you thought it would be? Did you think it would be this? I was about to say this easy, but it's because you sound very relaxed and happy with your lot. Are you?
Oh, what a great question, Anna. That's a nice question. Yes, I am very happy and I do feel relaxed. My entire working life, when I had day jobs, was on a schedule. And so as a writer, I do the very same thing. That's just how I work best as an author. So I get up in the morning, I have a schedule every day, I do different things on different days. And that is really what works for me. And I absolutely love it. And so what I miss about the traveling is meeting people, but I get to travel on occasion and fulfill that need. So I'm loving this.
I'm so glad. Thank you very much. I don't know if anybody, Steve, we're going to have to come back to the pack in the readers. You're being asked what you're going to wear and whether it's going to be something related to Linda's book.
That's a good question. I have not thought that far ahead, honestly. And Linda, we should talk about that. Who knows? Maybe we'll come up with something. I don't know right now. I will wear clothes. I'll guarantee that much.
Cowboy hat and chaps, that's what you need.
All right, let's do this.
That's got you sorted already, hasn't it? Oh dear, I'm already excited about the photographs. Thank you very much for sharing that. We'll all be holding on and waiting to hear how that goes. There's lots of comments, mostly related to the burlesque dancers. Everybody seems to be fascinated by, and the towns in Michigan. There were sort of lots of questions I missed. I apologise in the chat about that, but you've certainly caught the imagination, Linda. So huge congratulations on that front. People seem very interested and very excited, and you seem to be prolific. So again, congratulations to you. Is there anything either of you would like to share before we close today? Any last thoughts that you that I didn't think to ask?
Anna, thank you so much for having me. Steve, thank you for thinking of me. It's just been such a pleasure. So I wish you all well. So glad to have been here.
Absolutely. I was going to say the same thing, Linda. I know we've only, collaborated on the one book, but I feel like we've known each other longer, and just that collaboration and, the chats we've had in between on Clubhouse and things. I love your sort of approach to life and the stories you write and the characters that you put into them. I'm like, ooh, I want to read these burlesque books now too. So you've got us all very intrigued, Linda, and I can't wait to see what else comes from your mind onto the page. So thank you. Thanks so much for joining us, Linda. I appreciate it. And thank you, Anna.
Oh, you're both very welcome. And I think, Linda, if nothing else, you've certainly sold several more copies of a couple of your books. So you've got everybody looking you up. And Steve, we all know what a talented narrator you are. So congratulations to you both on this project. And I hope it's it's going to be a really big success for you. It's Gold Mountain by Linda Hughes and narrated by Steve Corona. Thank you very much for joining us. My takeaways. It sounds like communication is key, and these two seem to have made friends and done a beautiful job with their book. The process was beautifully managed by Steve, and I think it sounds like Linda was very forthcoming with the information she wanted and the stuff she wanted to get out of the process. So, congratulations to you both. Thank you very much to everybody who joined us today. Those who came up to the sofa, thank you, Rosemary. Thank you very much to everybody who participated in the chat, and to those who were here just listening. We couldn't do it without you. So, do make sure to have a wonderful week, everybody, and let's go out and be our favourite selves. Thank you very much indeed.
Thanks, Anna.
Thank you. Bye bye.